I think most families that are charitably inclined are really looking to make an impact. Number one, they have a charitable interest that's really designed to fulfill the kinds of needs that they see in either their community or with regard to some of the organizations that they've been exposed to. Most families want to do it in such a way that they are able to do it over a long period of time, use the resources that are available, define those resources early enough in the process. And I think it's really a matter of like any other financial need that most families have. They need to identify what resources they have to allocate to the various causes that they want to support. And the challenge really becomes the execution of that. And I think there's various ways of assisting families in properly executing their charitable giving, because the vehicles by which they deliver their charitable funding is really utmost importance to them. They don't have the time or expertise in many cases to utilize or identify the methods by which they're going to do it. They just know that they want to go ahead and do it. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of what I'll call alternative type assets that are very appropriate. The illiquidity of those assets, sometimes they arrive at the decision that they can't contribute those assets because of that characteristic. The fact of the matter is that things like real estate, private equity interests, and hedge funds are very appropriate to contribute to charities. The other thing that's a very advantageous asset are low basis shares of stock. Many families are either holding a concentrated equity position and it has a low basis because it was accumulated either over time or a number of years ago. There's two aspects of that. One, the charity loves that type of an asset because it typically has a very easily ascertainable fair market value because it's a marketable security. And from the family's perspective, if they were to liquidate that asset and not give it to a charity, they would recognize significant capital gains. And in that case, obviously, they will forego that capital gains tax cost by making that charitable contribution directly to the charity. The charitable lead trust is a little bit different than charitable remainder trust in the sense that the charity is actually getting current cash flow from that trust in the form of payments. And the deductibility of that is fairly similar, that the individual and the family is getting a charitable tax deduction in the year that the trust is set up. But it's a stream of payments essentially that every year are going to fulfill the charitable giving of that particular family, and those assets sit in trust, and at the end of the term of that trust, which is usually at the death of the donor, the remaining assets can go to the family or the beneficiaries of that trust, which is typically a spouse or children. To contrast that with a charitable remainder trust, the charity actually doesn't get the funding up front. There's actually the opposite. The beneficiaries are receiving an annual income stream from the trust that the donor has set up for them with the monies that have been contributed. And at the end of the time frame of that particular trust, the remaining assets will go directly to the charity. In both cases, the income tax efficiencies are fairly significant in terms of the income tax impact it could have, because the full value by doing various calculations can actually be realized as a charitable deduction upon setting up the trust. I think it's really important when you're thinking about the investment strategy associated with funds that are intended for charitable giving to think about the time horizon that those assets need to fulfill. And that's really tied in with a few different things. Number one, if you have these assets put aside in either some type of a trust vehicle or directly with a donor advised fund with a charity, you may have some intention in terms of the number of years that you want to dole those monies out. So if it's 2 years or 5 years and you have a certain dollar amount you want to give out to various organizations during that time frame, you really need to align your asset allocation, which is really a fundamental issue when you're managing any assets, with fulfilling that time frame and that dollar amount. A lot of times families want to give out a certain dollar amount each year, And in order to fulfill that, you can kind of figure out what the growth rate in terms of both dividends, interest, and capital gain growth that you're going to need to have in that portfolio. So based on several things, you can kind of create an asset allocation model that's going to be consistent with your giving intentions as well as the time frame involved. I think it's a very common question for people who are charitably inclined or are looking to make contributions to whether it be their alma mater or other organizations that they've been involved with over their lifetime. There really is no right answer to how much of my wealth or how much of my income I should be giving away on an annual basis. It's really a personal preference. But quite frankly, it needs to be part of an overall financial plan because like any other expense, it's extremely important for individuals to make sure they're incorporating it in with their other financial needs. In incorporating it in with their other financial needs, families can feel comfortable that the arrived at amount, whatever it might be, whether it be a percentage of income, percentage of assets, or a certain set dollar amount, is not going to interfere with all of their other financial goals. And at the same time, they can identify with institutions certain pledges or pledged amounts that they want to fulfill each year over a certain number of years. I think the number one motivation for most of the people that I've worked with over the years is that they feel very fortunate to have been successful enough and have accumulated enough wealth where they now can start giving back. And I think that really is the number one motivation in terms of why people set up various charitable initiatives. They identify various causes that are near and dear to them that at this point in their lives, they now can make an impact on. So it is very important when you're working with people like that to really help them figure out what the best mechanism is, what the most tax efficient way of giving is, because they are inclined, they are motivated to do it. So our job is to really give them the vehicles to accomplish those goals.